So many people that I meet when talking about this topic of emotions and how to manage them, a lot of them just feel hopeless that there's nothing that they can do to manage their emotions because they feel so overwhelming. And that simply is not true.
Hey everybody, I'm Lori Schultz.
And I'm Jen Giammo.
And welcome to another episode of Everybody Talks, the podcast where we explore the wide world of wellness. Sometimes we talk to experts, sometimes we talk to each other, but we're always talking to you. And if you want to watch this episode, go to our YouTube channel at Everybody Talks Podcast.
Every week we discuss topics from nutrition and exercise to mindfulness and self-care. And today we are talking all about your emotions, how to shift them, how to manage them. It's a great conversation. He is a distinguished psychologist and neuroscientist renowned for his expertise in emotion regulation. He serves as a professor of psychology and management at the University of Michigan, where he directs the Emotion and Self-Control Laboratory. It sounds like a place I need to go. Born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, he earned his bachelor's degree from the University of Pennsylvania and completed his PhD in psychology at Columbia. His research delves into the science of introspection, focusing on how internal dialogues influence various aspects of life, including our health, performance, and relationships.
He's authored 2 national best-selling books, and his work has been featured in prominent publications such as the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the New Yorker. Plus, he's appeared on major media outlets, including CBS Evening News and Good Morning America. His latest book, Shift, Managing Your Emotions So They Don't Manage You, is out right now. He's going to talk all about it with us. Please welcome Ethan Kross to Everybody Talks. Ethan, welcome.
Thanks for having me. It's such a privilege to be here with the two of you to talk about this. I've been looking forward to it.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on.
We always start a little bit telling us about yourself, how you got into this line of talking about your emotions, which is it's kind of boggles my mind that it's something from the beginning of time we've all man and women have wanted to do. All people have wanted to manage their emotions in some way, and it's just kind of interesting. So, how did you get started?
Yeah, well, that reference to of all time, to use a technical term, it blows my mind how long we have been struggling to discover solutions to managing our emotional lives, and maybe we'll talk about some of the history. It's fun and horrifying at the same time later on. But for me,
Yes.
a big part of how I got interested in this topic of emotions and how to manage them came from experiences I had growing up with my grandmother. So my grandmother was like a second mom to me. I would go to her house after school every day when I was in elementary school and middle school. My parents were working, and I'd take the bus to her house. She'd feed me, and I'd do my homework there. And in between those events, I would always ask her questions about her history because my grandmother had this type of somewhat secret past in my eyes. She was a hero to me. She grew up in Poland during World War II. And when she was in her early 20s, the Nazis invaded. In a very short span of time, she proceeded to have her life turned upside down. Her family was slaughtered. She narrowly escaped that fate, went on to live in different ghettos, camped out with partisans in the frozen woods, all trying to escape being killed. Ultimately survived, moved to the States, started a family, had my mom and uncle came along, so did I. And life seemed really good for her. And I would always ask her to tell me stories about what she experienced during the war, but she would never go there. Anytime I would ask her a question about it, she would just deflect, well, just go have some more food, like eat. And really encouraged me to eat. I was a very
It's a very,
generously proportioned
very
child
Jewish,
as well. Yeah.
very Jewish background.
Yeah. But, I joke, it's the truth though. I had this really either fortunate or unfortunate combination of parental backgrounds. My grandmother would like ply me with food, and my grandfather was a master tailor, which meant he effectively like let my pants out as the food was going down. And so it was like not a problem to keep going. Um, but she never talked to me about her experiences during the war and her emotions. And except for one day a year when she and her fellow survivors would organize these grassroots Remembrance Day events. And on that one day a year, all the emotions would come out. and then she'd go back to normal. And that was just so curious to me about how she managed her emotional life. She dealt with something that I still to this day view as extraordinary. Like, it's hard for me to fathom how I would respond if placed in the circumstances that she had to cope with. But she survived, she thrived, but she did this odd thing where she wouldn't talk about her emotions a lot of time. She'd dive in at other points, go back and forth. And so that just got me really interested in emotions from the outset. And when I went to college, I realized, wow, there's a whole major you could take on this topic. And I started taking classes and I haven't stopped.
Wow.
I think we have to kind of like start with the basics of, because you mentioned feelings and emotions. So
Right. And the
tell us the
difference.
difference. Why is the distinction important?
So, emotion is a term that we use to describe a response, a coordinated response that we have to things that are important to us in life. And sometimes those important, meaningful things are things that happen to us in the world. You're cut off while you're commuting to work, or you get an email that really upsets you. But we can also self-generate these important moments in our lives, like when we think about experiences that we deem important that may elicit positive or negative reactions. When that happens, we experience what we call an emotion. Now, when we experience an emotion, there's typically things happening in our bodies. So, um, the two of you strike me as individuals who have never experienced a hint of anxiety in your lives. Accurate?
Never. Nope.
Right? But
Never.
never, right? No one has. So when we experience a little anxiety, my guess is you may experience some of that in your stomach, like maybe there's some gastric stuff that happens. That's your body preparing you for a threat. So there's a physiological component to our emotions. Our thoughts are also being channeled by the emotions we're experiencing. So when we're anxious or angry about something, for example, we tend to narrowly focus on the issue at hand. You ever feel like when you're angry or anxious, all you can do, tunnel vision, focus on this issue? Nothing else matters. So your thoughts are being hijacked, if you will. And then there are these outward displays that we often present as well. So I can tell when my wife is happy typically or sad. I could tell it on my daughters too. Like I could see their facial displays. So lots of different components to this experience of emotion. They're loosely coordinated. What I mean by that is you don't have to have all of those components all the time to experience an emotion. Sometimes some people have really great poker faces, right? I could be so upset right now, but because I'm skilled at managing my displays, you probably wouldn't know. So that's why we say they're loosely coordinated. So that's emotions. Emotion is the umbrella term. It captures all those different pieces. What's a feeling? A feeling is the part of an emotional experience that you are aware of. So when you get the flu, there are lots of things happening inside your body. You have no awareness about it. Your blood cells are proliferating at different rates. Your organs are functioning differently. Your heart rate may be beating slower or faster in ways that unless you wear one of these doodads that I'm wearing now, like you probably don't know. What you are aware of though is the fatigue, the chills, the body aches. The feelings are the body aches, the fever of an emotional response. It's the part of it that you're aware of, and that's the difference.
Okay. That
That's
makes
such a good
sense.
way of putting
Yeah, it really
it,
is. I think people are so curious about their emotional lives in general. Like as I was reading your book, I'm all these images are coming into my mind and the different emotions that I was feeling at these different times. And what would you say emotions reveal about a person?
Well, I think emotions get at the very core of who we are as human beings, which in part is why I like to describe people's emotional lives as like a fingerprint, utterly unique. If we go back to when do we experience emotions? We experience emotions when we encounter things that are meaningful to us. What is meaningful to us is unique. Like, the two of you, I'm guessing, are close friends, and you share some overlap in what you judge to be meaningful and important, and might experience some emotions that are similar in the same context, but you're also totally distinct individuals. Um, like I see a cat on the street I experience nothing, no emotional response. My wife or daughters see a cat, it's unbelievable. Like this is like a walking deity to them. Like they, oh my god, it's so cute. And they rush over to it and they pet it. And I'm thinking, oh my god, you're getting dander. I'm going to start sneezing. So that's an example. I'm allergic, right? But that's an
Me
example
too.
of you get it, right? Maybe we do
Yeah.
experience a different kind of emotion when we see cats, but our triggers can be really, really distinct. Now, there's a lot that we have in common, right? So I often use the example of you brush up against someone who maybe hasn't showered in 2 years. You're probably going to experience an emotional response. Most people would, this kind of automatic response. But emotions are who we are. It is the essence, I think, of humanity, which makes them, on the one hand, so unbelievably special. But on the other hand, also such a vulnerability for us because, as I've studied throughout my career, we all experience emotions all the time. And they can be really helpful to us, but they can be really, really unhelpful too when they're triggered out of proportion. And, figuring out how to handle that, I think, is the big puzzle of humanity.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's what
I
we
mean,
want to learn today. Can you
yeah.
teach us that today, how to
Today.
do it?
Let's do it. Well,
Oh,
you and all the
I know.
listeners will be emotionally
Yes.
blissful by the time we are done. Yes.
I hope so. I
I
hope
hope that
so.
that's true.
I think it's a really hard thing to do. Again, as I was reading and thinking about how I manage my own emotions, and not well, by the way, not well at all. And I'm a lingerer. I'm a person who ruminates and lingers on something. I can remember an event and I can feel those emotions just as intensely right now as I did 10 years ago. So I'd like to work on that. That's one of the things that I have that um, whereas Lori, I feel like she can experience, let's say, the same exact thing, and she'll forget about it in a day
Moments
or an
later.
hour.
Yeah.
She'll forget
Yeah.
about it,
I mean,
and
we
I'm still
always,
ruminating.
and she'll be
So,
like, remember, it's like, that's still, and she would be like, that's still bothering me. And I was like, I have no idea what she's talking about. That's how quickly I've let it go.
yeah,
That's how differently, I mean, we're really very different in that respect.
yeah. But I think that it's so complex, and your book has a way of really kind of breaking it down. And you talk about these different shifts that you can make. I want to talk a little bit about that. Some of these tools that we can use
Yeah.
to help us.
Yeah. Well, it there is a enormous complexity to it, but there's also a way of navigating through all of that noise to find some really simple things that you can do. And that's something that I just love about this space. When I talk about the different shifters or tools you can use to push your emotions around, I like to remind folks that decades and decades of really complicated research has gone into the identification of these tools and the profiling of how they work. But what I love about them is the take home is often really simple, like how to incorporate these tools into your lives. And I think that provides folks with a real opportunity because so many people that I meet when talking about this topic of emotions and how to manage them, a lot of them just feel hopeless that there's nothing that they can do to manage their emotions because they feel so overwhelming. And that simply is not true. And I can say that with certainty as a scientist. And, the two of you know this about me. I am a scientist. And one of the things that means to me is when I'm talking to you about tools and when I'm talking about emotions, everything I'm saying is not based on my opinion. This is based on scientific knowledge. So if we want to start getting in there, like let's get real about our emotions. And I want to know actually a little bit. I'm holding back my desire to kind of flip this and start interviewing the two of you because
You could feel
I
free.
really want to know what
We're
the
very,
difference here is between your styles and how you relate to your emotions. So we'll get to that. But I think the first place we need to start is with a really basic question. Do you think you can control your emotions? Because people vary widely on how they answer this question. And I actually share an anecdote in my book about this topic. So several years ago, I came across a study that reported that 40% of adolescents, when asked, "Can you control your emotions?" basically said no. This finding floored me As you mentioned earlier, I am the director of a laboratory called the Emotion and Self Control Laboratory. I've dedicated my not just professional life, but a big part of who I am to this notion that there are things we can do to manage our emotions. And here I have almost half of a group that is sampled saying, what's the point? You can't actually do it. So I've really wrapped my head around this. And the way I make sense of that data is as follows. There are parts of our emotional life that are out of our control. You brush up against a smelly person, you experience the negative reaction. You are maybe just walking down the street and a dark thought pops up in your head that leads you to feel a particular way. You have no idea where that thought came from, but it just occurs to you. And I feel bad right now. We do not have control over when we are going to get triggered in different ways. Lots of things are out of our control in that regard. So, on the one hand, if you're thinking about that part of the emotional cycle, you don't have control. However, once an emotion is triggered, that's our playground for pushing that emotion around. Because what we can control is the trajectory of that emotional response, how long it lasts, how intense or not intense the emotion is. So, you both described earlier, you're really good at letting it go. You maybe hold on to it longer. That right there is an instance of how you can, by different ways of interacting with this experience, change its trajectory. And that's where the real opportunity lies. Now, the reason I'm taking so much of our precious time together to talk about this is as follows. If you don't think you can control your emotions, are you going to take any steps to actually do it?
No,
Right? It makes no
no,
sense. If I don't
absolutely not.
think
Yeah.
there's anything I can do to get fit, to keep my cholesterol levels in check, and fit into the same pair of pants that I wore 5 years ago. Why would I do these painful things of sometimes going to the gym and hurting myself and eating all these green foods, which fine, they're okay, but let me tell you, like, I prefer the Chips Ahoy cookies, right? Like, there are
Yeah.
other things that are more pleasurable that I'm sacrificing.
Right.
I do those things because I believe that if I do those things, I am going to be healthier. Same is true for regulating our emotions. You've got to believe it's possible. That's step one. And then once you do, now the next step is we've got to teach you what the good foods are and how they're different from the bad foods. What are the healthy exercises and what are the bad ones? And we as a culture do not do that for one another. And I think that's where a major opportunity lies.
I was going to say a lot of things that you talk about in the book, I feel are very not to I'm not putting them down. I'm just saying that they're very simple, easy things. It's like listening to your favorite song to put you in the music, like go to a favorite place that makes you feel better, like things that I feel like people may do and they don't really realize they're doing it to help themselves feel better.
That's
They
right.
just are like reaching for things. And it's interesting to me that I think you say, like, why aren't we teaching these tools to people? Because they are very like rudimentary. They're very innate in our being to do those things, you know?
Yeah, so here's how I make sense of this space. So I think, first of all, I think let me scratch that. I don't think I know, right? I know that a lot of people they go through life and they stumble on solutions that work or that they think they work. So we don't like experiencing emotions for a really long time that hurt us, right? Anxiety, sadness, plug in your favorite negative emotion. And so when those emotions bubble up, we kind of search for solutions. Our culture, our families, the institutions we belong to, they give us some solutions, right? Some of them are helpful, some of them are not. We discover things on our own, um, but we're not really deliberate in how we wield those tools. And I think this opportunity to become much more strategic, that's one place we can get a lot better. Then, of course, we sometimes hear things that we should do that should make us feel better, but the research shows that they can actually make things worse or not help at all. So, like venting, tends not to be a good thing. You should always be in the moment. No, you should not. Being in the moment sometimes can be great. Being out of the moment can be good as well. And the list goes on and on and on. Avoidance is always bad. No, it's not. Not responding to the email as soon as you get it by distracting for several hours or a day and coming back, really good thing. So there's really, I think, the what we're talking about here is getting people to become a lot more literate when it comes to their inner worlds and their emotional lives. As you said, these tools, they are simple in the take homes, right? You don't need a PhD, you don't need an MA, you don't need a BA, you don't even need a high school degree to use these tools. And I love that about them. You do need those advanced degrees to do the science to validate them, but in terms of applying them in your life, like, we're ready to start doing them right now. And I think that's a really good thing.
Yeah, as simple as they are, though, I find them very difficult
Yeah.
to employ. And I think one of the things that I learned in reading this was, you just mentioned avoidance. And in my mind, I always thought, well, that's bad. You don't want to avoid it. You want to dive in. You want to feel it. But,
See what
excuse
you've
me.
been doing right all this time?
Excuse me. But,
Although too much diving in, that was the topic of my first book. I mean, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Like, so I was raised that way, right? I was raised by my parents. Like, if
Yeah.
you got a problem, here's what you do, Ethan. Like, I'm rolling up my sleeves. They're not rolling. Roll
yeah,
up your
Yeah,
sleeves.
yeah.
sure.
Dive in. Don't ignore it. Don't. That has gotten me into trouble at times,
Hmm.
right? Because sometimes being able to step back and get some mental space is an unbelievable asset, right? Because then I could come back to the problem and I have more objectivity, and the problem has settled. So, on this topic of avoidance, which is a big myth I try to bust in the book, it is absolutely true that if you chronically avoid things, this is not good. So, and what do I mean by chronic avoidance? Something bad happens. I have this decision rule. Whenever something bothers me, I'm going to push it aside, try to suppress it, not go there, distract, do other stuff. That's all I do. This is not good. There are countless studies which show that chronic avoidance leads to negative outcomes. What we have done from that observation, though, is we have overgeneralized to say that any form of avoidance is good. So, first of all, you don't have to choose between only approaching or only avoiding. You can go back and forth. You can be strategic. And lots of research shows that being flexible in that way, this can be really, really helpful. Um, I forget if I mentioned this story when we first, did I tell you the Taylor Swift story? When we
No.
met. Okay, I'll share with
No,
you a
I
little.
think
No, I don't
no.
remember. I
Okay,
think we would have,
this was
yeah.
a really powerful personal lesson for me. Um, so Taylor Swift, as you've heard of her, yes. Okay,
Yes.
silly
Who?
question. She came to play near my home, and I'd never heard like my daughters talk about her, and tickets were a fortune, and at one point my wife was like, "Well, should we go? Should we just go last minute?" I'm like, whatever you want to do, I'll support it. But if you're asking my opinion, no, we shouldn't go. We should go on a vacation instead, right? Like, absolutely not. And so in that instance, my wife decided, okay, I agree, and we didn't go. Boy, was this one of the worst judgments I've ever made, because
Yeah.
the day after that concert, I did not hear the end of this. Like, we should have gone. It was a generational experience, and so for the next like year and a half, all I'm hearing daily is, we've got to find a way to go see Taylor. We've got to go, and so my wife and daughters, they came up with a plan, and it was a strategy. We're gonna road trip to Toronto. Hotel reservations were made. I was given ample notification about this, and like 2 weeks before the concert, it was like a little voice whispered in my ear, "Check your calendar. Check your calendar." And I go down to my computer, and I see I had scheduled a workshop that I could not extricate myself from without suffering significant professional repercussions, on the date that we were supposed to go to see Taylor. And I immediately went to my wife, I'm so sorry. I don't know how this happened. How do we make this right? And in that moment, my desire to just deal with the situation right there did no good for our relationship or the situation. She needed some time to process, to cool down. And so what I did, I took a page from her, from talking to me about this in the past. I didn't touch the topic for a day. And then I came back to it and we were able to have a great conversation. Well, great's too strong. It was painful still. But we came up with a solution. We ended up seeing her, all's good. The point there is m- we needed some time to let the emotions die down. I deliberately avoided in that situation for like a day, right? And then it was a lot more productive. So that's an example of flexibility, and it's something that I've learned to get better at in my life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would think that that's a challenge. That's a hard thing to do, is to
It is
have
so
that
hard.
sort of, to know what tools to use when. Like one of the chapters you talk about, do you need a hammer or a screwdriver? And I thought that was so funny. But I just have a question, just to go back for a second about, and I don't know if this is, I just think this because I feel this way, or if this is a real thing. But is it true that when you experience, a negative emotion, or something negative happens to you, that feeling lingers much longer than like something joyful? Like, I feel like the feeling of joy is so fleeting, but yet this feeling of whatever, anxiety, sadness, whatever it is,
Hangs on.
has like such a heavy, longer
Hangs on.
lasting effect.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Not necessarily. There's
Okay. Okay.
complexity to it. So this is actually gets into the topic of, there's a whole subfield that studies this. It's called emotion duration, and it looks at how long different emotions last. And so the first thing to keep in mind is how long the emotion lasts is somewhat influenced by how you engage with that emotion. So if you're shining your mental spotlight on the experience, you're going to keep it active. So um, I know how to like keep a positive experience active for a long time. And I do that because, I'm not Buddha-esque in my goals for my emotional life. I'm much more hedonistic in the sense that I want to maximize the positivity and minimize the negativity. That's just a profile that appeals well to me. And so I try to savor the positive things by replaying them over and over in my head very concretely. So I'm visualizing like my daughter's jamming out to Taylor Swift, or we just got back from vacation on spring break, and I'm seeing them on the beach playing, and that floods me with positivity. Now, if you do the same thing for the negative stuff, if I rehearse in concrete detail the, painful conversation I had with someone a few weeks ago, like that's going to drive the emotion. So, how you focus on the experience determines its duration. Having said that, some emotions do in general last longer than others. So, anger tends to be more fleeting, for example, than sadness. I'm not exactly sure where joy falls into that space, but there are different like overall time courses associated with people's emotions.
Okay. Okay. I was just curious. Um, Talk to us about managing versus controlling your emotions. Is there a difference there? You kind of talked about this flexibility of being able to switch, but
In my mind, there isn't. I will say that so much of this is semantics and how you define those words. I will say that a lot of people have more of a negative reaction to the word control, feels more cold and robotic and manipulative, whereas managing is softer. And so I think that's a more appetizing entry point into having this conversation. But when I think about these things, to me, it's the same. Like I want to push the emotion around in a certain way. And typically for me, it's decreasing the volume and shortening how long it lasts. Now, I want to come back to though something that you said. Um, and if you don't want to talk about this now, just tell me because I know you have a ton of questions, and I want to make sure we get to all of
no,
them.
no, that's
No,
okay.
no,
Um,
that's fine.
but you mentioned like the challenge of implementing these tools. Like figuring out when to do it and then actually doing it. So I want to address both of those questions because I think they're ones that are not specific to the two of you, but lots of people have these questions. So, number one, we need to self experiment. I wish, as a scientist who has spent his entire life studying these topics, I could meet with each of you individually, do a history, maybe a genetic profile, like learn a little bit about your genetic predispositions, learn about your life history, your current circumstances, and then based on that information, based on that workup, if you will, prescribe to you. You should use these 4 tools to deal with this situation at work, and you should use these 6 ones in this sequencing and for this amount of time when you're dealing with a problem at home. I cannot do that, and I do not know any scientist who can. The reason for that is it's not a bummer, it's just a state of where we are as a field. What we have done is we have identified lots of different tools. We understand how they work. We can teach people those tools. What we have not yet done is studied the complex interactions between tools. So I don't know how these different tools combine to benefit different people in different situations. That is what we are doing right now. And science is slow. It's going to take some time to figure that out. While everyone in the world is waiting for these answers, there is something they can do. Number one, familiarize yourself with the tools that exist. What have we talked about? We talked about so far attention, whether you're being strategic and how you deploy it. I think we mentioned music and spaces. We didn't get into it too much. Those are 3. There are like 30 tools out there. There is a lot. It's like the equivalent of going to a gym. You see all the different equipment. Step one, you need to go into that gym and you need to learn what each machine does. And you need to try out the different machines. And you need to figure out which combinations of exercises work for you, given your goals, given who you are. That is the first critical step. And it's an easy one. Familiarize yourself with the tools and then start self experimenting. Now, once you figure out these are the tools that work for me, then the big question is okay, how can I ensure that I use these tools in the heat of the moment when I start to get flustered and overwhelmed and it feels like the front part of my brain is shutting down? You ever get like that?
Mhm.
Yes. Okay. We all do at times, right?
Yeah.
We have also, we, the field, have tried to figure out like, how do you help people use these tools reflexively, almost like making them a habit. And I love some of this science. There's a framework with a very easy to remember name. We call it Whoop. It's just like the song, like Whoop. There it is. That
There it
song.
Mhm.
is. Yep.
That's actually
Mhm.
Whoop. I
Womp.
discovered when I was
There's an M.
this.
I wasn't gonna correct you that
Yeah,
there's an
no.
M in
The
there,
fa-
but
the
that's
fact
okay.
checker on my book discovered this. I was heartbroken,
Yeah.
but I figured it's close
Yes.
enough. We're gonna run with it.
Close enough.
So
Yeah.
so Whoop is a framework designed essentially to help people overcome what is often described as the New Year's resolution dilemma. We all say we're going to lose weight, we're going to go to the gym, but then you look at what happens, 50% of people fail, right? They sign up for the gym, they go for a week, and then they kind of fall off the wagon. How do you get people better at that? Well, you get them to whoop it up. So what does whoop stand for? Let's go through each letter. W, that's your wish. So what's your goal? What's your emotion regulation goal? Okay, for me, my goal is, my kids, I got 2 daughters, 11 and 15, and they love each other and they're just so cute. And I love seeing that. But sometimes, boy, oh boy, can they just act not nice to one another. And like it really bothers me when I see them behaving that way. And I get very upset when I witness that. So my first wish is for me not to become so upset and angry when I see them acting mean to one another. Okay, let's get to the O, the first O in Whoop. That's our outcome. What you do here is now you get a person. So let's think about what would happen if you were able to achieve this wish that you have of not becoming angry when your kids get upset. Well, um, I'd be able to interact with them in a more effective manner. We probably have better relationships on the whole. The family would be healthier. And the whole point of getting people to think about the outcome here is you want to motivate them to achieve this goal, like really energize them. Then you get to the second O, the obstacle, personal obstacles. All right, you've got this goal, you're really motivated. What can get in the way of you achieving this goal? Well, when I see them act ugly to one another, I feel like my face is like flooded with warmth. I clench my fists. I get really, really upset. I have this like stereotypical anger response. I want to yell. Okay, now we've identified the obstacle. Now we get to the P, which is our plan. But it's not any kind of plan, it's a specific plan. We call it an if then plan. We have people write this out. So if your daughters start fighting and you find yourself getting really angry, then, and then I plug in the strategy that I'm going to use. Then I'm going to look at the big picture, remind myself they're kids. All kids fight. Or then I'm going to walk away, listen to my favorite calming song, and then come back later. And you plug in as many tools as you need. The beauty of this framework is it gets you to think very, very concretely about your goals. It motivates you, but it also gets you to game out how things may go the wrong way. And it gives you solutions in those circumstances. So you don't have to stop and think, what should I do? You've got a plan that you can implement automatically. Research shows that these WHOOP plans can be really effective for helping people follow through with their goals in everyday life. This works for kids as young as first grade, all the way up to the lifespan. And interestingly, as part of the research for my book, I interviewed a Navy SEAL about his, just his life experiences. And when I was talking to him about this framework, he paused. He goes, Ethan, this is exactly what the SEALs do before every mission. We think about what's our objective? What do we hope to achieve? What are the things that might stand in the way? And then for every obstacle, we come up with a plan. 3 plans deep. If this happens, then we're going to do this. If this happens, and then they all go around a circle and they call on each other to make sure everyone knows what to do so they're on the same page. This is how one of the most elite organizations in the world prepares themselves to be successful. We can all do this for the areas of our lives that are important to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
I think it just takes, like you said,
Yeah.
breaking it down that way, but then practicing it when
Practicing
you're in
it
those
is hard.
situations,
Yeah, definitely.
I want to go back for 1 second to, you talked about being in the present moment is not always good. And so this, like I do a lot of meditation, a lot of mindfulness training, all of that stuff. And that's the main objective is be present, but it's impossible, as you've said. Why is that? And why is it beneficial to not be in the present moment?
Well, so to be clear, there are great virtues that come from being in the moment and being able to engage in the moment, and great virtues that come from mindfulness. I got a mantra when I was 5 years old. I didn't want it, but I've benefited from it, and I meditate on and off throughout my life. So I want to be clear, like these are useful skills. The problem is in promoting mindfulness and its associated practices, we've thrown the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, in the sense that a lot of people now think they always have to be in the moment. And if they're not in the moment, there's something wrong with them. That's a harmful message for a few reasons. Number one, the mind did not evolve to always be in the moment. The human mind evolved to be a time traveler. And this is a virtue that we all benefit from. If you can't travel in time in your mind, you cannot learn from your mistakes. If you can't travel in time in your mind, you cannot plan for the future. If you can't travel in time in your mind, you can't savor the great things that have happened. If you can't travel in time in your mind, you can't fantasize about the good things that await you. There's so much richness that comes from being able to time travel in our mind. Now, it's absolutely true that a huge part of human suffering emanates from jumping into this mental time travel machine and having it break down in the negative past ruminate. Oh my God, how did I do this? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Or going into the negative future, my least favorite. What if this? What if this? What if this? Next thing you know, it's all over, right? Like done. Um, so one solution when you get stuck in the negative past or future is to come back to the moment. And if that works for you, great, keep doing it. But there are lots of other things you can do too, including leveraging this capacity to travel in time in your mind to your benefit. And there are two ways you could do it that are super simple, and they're part of my immediate go-to approach for managing emotions. I time travel into the future. I ask myself, how am I going to feel about this 10 years from now, 20 years from now? Most of the adversity I've experienced, it has happened, it has spiked, and then as time goes on, it has subsided. Not everything, but most things. When I'm stuck, I focus on the worst part of the experience. I lose sight of the fact that things are going to get better. You jump into the mental time travel machine and you think to yourself, how am I going to feel about this 15 years from now? It reminds you that what you're going through is temporary. That gives you hope in terms of volume on your negative experiences down, your negative feelings. I also time travel into the past. This is even more powerful for me. When things really feel difficult, I get into the time travel machine. I go back to the early 1940s. I spend time with my bubby in Eastern Poland. I don't have to spend a lot of time with her in the frozen Polish woods to very quickly, in my gut, understand that what I'm struggling with right now pales in comparison to what she endured. So that's a way of using mental time travel to broaden my perspective. And not everyone has Holocaust surviving grandparents, but I do think everyone has their own set of um, adversities that they have persevered through, or that their family members have persevered through, or that members of their extended cultures have persevered through that they could cling to in those ways. So I think what we need to do is make people better at mental time travel overall, including sometimes coming into the present, rather than focusing singularly on that capacity.
Yeah, I love that. And I think
I
it's
I do
also,
too. Yeah.
kind of looking back at your past
Right.
experiences to inform a
Yeah.
decision that you have to make, or what did I
Yeah.
do the last time something like this happened,
Right.
that kind of thing.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
my thing is more of like, I should have done that. Why didn't
Shoulda,
I
woulda,
say
coulda.
this?
Yeah.
What,
Yeah.
We're both presidents of the shoulda, woulda, coulda club. I can tell you
Yeah,
that.
it's a very popular club. I
Um,
try to stay away from it as much
yes.
as possible. And look,
Well, I do too, but I don't get very far
but
sometimes.
and I think for that too, like, just another message is if you find yourself in the shoulda, woulda, coulda club, um, like, welcome to the human condition. We all do at times, and it's a sign that you care. It's a sign that you want to get better. We all screw up. I have yet to meet an individual who has not. And I think accepting that is really step one. And then, it's in the past. Learn from it, move forward. Easier said than done, but hopefully, some of the tools that I talk about in the book make it a little bit easier for you to do that. And anyone who's listening.
Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
I mean, one thing that resonated with me, and especially right now, and everyone's tired of hearing about this ad nauseum, my office just underwent a huge move from our cozy Upper West Side offices that were very small, very intimate, into like a big corporate setting. And I was thinking about what you were talking about culture and how your culture and how I realized this past week, especially, we've been coming into the new office in drips and drabs, but on Tuesday and Wednesday of this week, we're getting ready to go live next week for the first time. And there was 2 days where everybody was in there, and I felt such a comfort from knowing, like, everyone was there, and I was like, oh, this is us. This is making me feel better. Like, everything surrounding the move has felt awful, but all of us navigating this new situation together, and we were all there and asking the same questions, and it resonated with me because I was like, oh, my work culture is such a family that it made me, it's like, oh wait, I have like the right people here to like outfit me and work through this and get to the end, and eventually I know it's going to feel normal. Not there yet, but it's going to be.
And
And
eventually we'll stop hearing
and
about it.
eventually we'll stop hearing about it. I'm very stuck. It's very new.
I think when it's right in front of you, right? It like so our emotions are tuned to what's happening, right? And so when there are disruptive forces, it makes sense that you are going to respond to that. You're going to be sensitive to that. It might be a little strange if you weren't sensitive to that, right? Like that
I
might
guess
not be a
that's so.
good thing. And so the key is to like recognize that, there's a great phrase. I'm going to butcher it, but um, like abnormal times call for abnormal reactions. Like there's a link there. Like if there's a major problem, you should start feeling negative. That means you're working the way you're supposed to work. You just want to keep it in check. And I think just knowing that you will be live in a couple of days and that's going to become the new normal. And then you'll be off to the next curveball. That should provide
Then
some.
it'll be
Yeah.
fine.
I mean, I have
Yeah,
I have some
definitely.
stuff coming up too that, is causing a little bit more turbulence in life, but I know it's going to
Yeah.
happen in the next week or two, and then things will calm down.
Yeah. Right. We know you have to go. Is there any last little bitty bit that you want to?
Yeah, I would say here's some take homes. So, number one, if you experience negative emotions at times, nothing wrong with you. We shouldn't strive to not experience negative emotions. That actually wouldn't be good for you. The real goal is to keep those negative emotions in check. And the good news is there are lots of tools you can use to do it. There are no one size fits all solutions. I want to repeat that again. It is such an important take home. No one size fits all solutions. Different tools work for different people in different situations. So learn about the tools and please share them with other people because if there's one giant opportunity that I think exists for society, it is to help one another manage our emotions better. I think if we were able to do that, this world would be a much better place in so many regards. So do that, and here's a bonus. Research shows that one of the best ways to help yourself is to help someone else. So it'll help you manage your emotions by sharing these things.
There you go.
Amazing.
I love
And if
that.
you want to learn the tools, you should read Ethan's book, Shift, Managing Your Emotions So They Don't Manage You. It's a great book, easy read. And thank you so much for being here, Ethan.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It was super fun.
Another look at avoidance. Your avoidance of all these things are not bad.
I'm not an avoider. I'm a ruminator. I don't avoid.
I think you avoid also.
I mean, certain things I avoid, but I think that I'm doing myself like a service by avoiding certain things.
I think that you're right about that. Like the things that
certain
you do.
things.
Yeah, certain things.
Because
yes.
there's no need to
Yeah.
invite those things into my life that are negative. So but the problem I have is, and I didn't really get to like dive into this too much with him, but like, how do you, first of all, why do certain thoughts come up in your mind, like over and over and over again,
Yeah.
like the same things.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm time traveling back and you
Yeah.
can't change it. And it
I
just
know.
becomes this frustration
I
of like,
know.
why didn't I do that? Why didn't I say this? And I mean, he explained that.
He said
and
that,
he did. But I don't know. We didn't get into like, in his book, he talks about like intrusive thoughts.
I know.
And like some of that stuff's a little scary.
It's funny because some things, sneak up on you. Like, I forgot what it is. Something happened the other day. I was watching something. It had nothing to do with anything. It immediately made me feel sad about my dad. And which it's like, look, I think about my dad every day, and I obviously, miss him very much. But whatever it was, I don't remember what it was. But like, why did that?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
It
like,
had nothing to do. No one
Yes.
died. It was like not about anything, but something made it all like I felt like incredible sadness.
Isn't that crazy?
And out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like, and it wasn't even anything.
Yeah, like I kind of like, we didn't get into the science
like the
so
different
much.
triggers of like what triggers
But
you.
yeah, and like
Yeah.
from a neurological perspective,
Yeah.
like why does your brain do that? What is
Right.
it? Like I know
Right.
certain things like your brain is protecting you from
Right.
feeling whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah, he was great. I mean, I'd love
He's
to
so
talk to him
interesting.
again. Yeah.
I know. He was great.
The book is fantastic.
It really
Definitely get
is.
this book.
Yeah.
Listen to it, read it, whatever. Shift.
But anyway, so hope you got a little bit out of that to control your emotions. Not control.
Or manage them.
Manage your emotions. I'm Lori Schulweiss.
And I'm Jen Giamo.
And this was Everybody Talks.
Talk to you next time. For more information about our podcast, to learn more about us, or to catch up on all of our episodes, go to our website at everybodytalkspodcast.com.
Follow us on Instagram at Shirley, at Jen Giamo, and at Everybody Talks. And if you want to watch today's episode, go to our YouTube channel at Everybody Talks Podcast.
If you want to be a part of the conversation, join the Everybody Talks community and become an exclusive member of our wellness group. Check out the link in our show notes to learn more.
Don't forget, if you like what you've heard, give us a 5-star rating, write a review, and tell a friend. We're for everybody and everybody. The Everybody Talks podcast is co-created, executive produced, and hosted by us, Lori Schulweiss and Jen Giamo. Produced and edited by Station 16.
Our theme song music is written and performed by Jackie Ryle and Aaron Navisi, with additional support from our pups, Oliver, Milo, Murray, and Frankie.
Talk to you next time.